In the quiet stillness of dawn, as the desert winds whispered over the camp of Abraham, something extraordinary was about to happen. The weight of an ancient promise, one spoken directly by God himself, hung in the air, waiting to become reality. Sarah, long past the age of bearing children, had laughed when she heard the prophecy. Was it the laugh of doubt or hope? This is a story of laughter born from miracles, faith that overcame impossibility, and choices that reshaped destinies. The Lord visited Sarah, just as he had promised. And in her old age, against all human logic, she bore Abraham a son. This was the moment they had waited for. Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the time of which God had spoken to him. Genesis 21 verse 2. Abraham named the child Isaac, which means, laughter, for had not Sarah laughed when she first heard she would bear a child? Now, her laughter was not of disbelief but of overflowing joy. God has made laughter for me, everyone who hears will laugh over me. Genesis 21 verse 6. At the age of 8 days, as was commanded by God, Abraham circumcised Isaac. Sarah watched in awe as Abraham, at 100 years old, marveled at his son. The promise had come true, and Isaac's cries echoed like music through the desert air. Time passed, and the boy Isaac grew. On the day of his weaning, Abraham held a great feast to celebrate his son. The camp was alive with joy. But amidst the laughter and celebration, a shadow crept in. Sarah's eyes caught sight of Ishmael, the son Abraham had with Hagar, the Egyptian servant. Ishmael was laughing, but not with joy. His laughter was cruel, mocking Isaac, as jealousy flared between the brothers. Sarah's heart burned with a fierce protectiveness. She turned to Abraham and said, "Cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac." Genesis 21 verse 10. Abraham's heart was troubled. Ishmael was still his son, and this request pained him. But God spoke to Abraham, assuring him, "Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for through Isaac shall your offspring be named." Genesis 21 verse 12. And so, with a heavy heart, Abraham obeyed. Early in the morning, Abraham gave Hagar and Ishmael bread and a skin of water, and sent them away. Hagar wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. But the desert is an unforgiving place. Soon, the water was gone, and Ishmael grew faint. Hagar, unable to bear the sight of her son dying, placed him under a bush. She sat down a distance away, crying out, "Let me not look on the death of the child." Genesis 21 verse 16. In her anguish, Hagar's voice rose to heaven. But God heard her, for he is a God who listens. The angel of God called to Hagar. "What troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Lift up the boy, and hold him fast, for I will make him into a great nation." Genesis 21 verses 17 to 18. Then, miraculously, Hagar's eyes were opened, and she saw a well of water nearby. She rushed to fill her skin and gave Ishmael a drink. The boy revived, and the promise of God to Ishmael began to take root. And God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. Genesis 21 verse 20. Meanwhile, Abraham's life continued to reflect God's favor. The king of Gerar, Abimelech, approached Abraham with a request. "God is with you in all that you do." Genesis 21 verse 22. Abimelech wanted to make a covenant of peace with Abraham, ensuring honesty and kindness between them and their descendants. Abraham agreed but raised a grievance. Abimelech's servants had seized a well of water that belonged to Abraham. Abimelech, unaware of the dispute, restored the well. To seal the agreement, Abraham gave sheep and oxen to Abimelech, and the place was called Beersheba, meaning, the well of oath. So they made a covenant at Beersheba. Genesis 21 verse 32. From that day, Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God, who had provided for him yet again. Genesis 21 is a tapestry of God's promises fulfilled. Isaac's birth proved that nothing is impossible for God, while Ishmael's survival testified to his mercy and provision even in the wilderness. Abraham, through trials and triumphs, witnessed God's faithfulness at every turn. As we look at this story, it reminds us that God's timing is perfect, His promises are unbreakable, and He hears the cries of those who call on Him, whether in laughter or in tears.